action is needed. We need to address the impacts of climate change on the agri-food systems. And we need to allocate more funds definitely to climate change adaptation and the agri-food systems. And actually, to act on it now offers a far better approach than to only disaster or emergency respond. So we are here with an amazing panel of very knowledgeable people, and it's my honor as the CEO of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens to introduce you to governmental representatives, but also change makers from the ground, and obviously also organizations like the GIZ that are tackling system solutions on a daily basis. Let me start to introduce to you Mr. Lamine Diatta, and maybe you can raise your hand so that everyone knows. He's the officer in charge of agriculture, forestry, and other land uses in the Directorate for Environment and Classified Establishments in Senegal. Thank you for being here. Let me introduce secondly Eliud Rugut. He's a smallholder farmer and Ban Ki-moon Center AgriChampion. We are very proud to have him as part of our Changemaker cohort. And Eliud is doing lots of things. He's a true stands particularly also for the idea of the 1 acre land of parents to their children. And you will tell us more about this idea and hopefully other ideas as well. So welcome, Eliud. We also have with us Esther Kihoro. Esther is a scientist at CGIAR, which is surely familiar to many of you, in the Gender and Youth Impact Platform. She is a senior scientist and has more than a in gender, in climate change, in agricultural and rural development, and of course is a beacon of hope for women empowerment and the agri-food systems. You worked for ILRI before, so you bring that expertise to the panel as well. We also have with us Samuel Tumwesigye, is that correct? Yes, almost right. Who is an agricultural and rural development specialist, a professional for more than a decade, 13 years in various programs. You worked for UNDP, FAO, BATU, and others. Designed and implemented natural and agricultural system transformation programs. So you can tell us from the systemic level more. And you studied in Leuven, Belgium, which is quite remarkable as well. You are a global citizen already from your background as well. And then with us last, but by no means least, is Sophia Baumert, advisor for agriculture and climate of the Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit. Many of you will know that as GIZ. She is a professional in agricultural sustainability, climate change, and agri-food systems. And can I break the news that you will actually move to Nairobi? So I broke the news. Sophia will actually move to Nairobi soon enough and will be here for 4 years at least. So that's good news as well. She will shed a light on the GIZ workings. Now, I do want this to be a dialogue, not only a letter to you, but also we want to engage with you. But still, let me kickstart with the first question, and I want to pose that to actually you, our dear Lamine Diatta, officer in charge of agriculture, forestry, and other land uses. Considering that countries are now tracking their food system transformation, these pathways are complicated. There are the NDCs, there are the NAPs. How do you think can implementation of a country agenda be best fostered? And what are key considerations for good practices that need to flow into that? Over to you.
Okay, thank you everybody. It is a real pleasure for us to attend to this important event, to learn from everyone, but also to share our experiences. Yes, climate change is becoming now a very, very important challenge in least developed countries. I can just highlight that Senegal is a least developed country. And since we ratify the convention, we have set it at some policies for implementation. And in our first policies, we call it National Action Plan, Adaptation Plan. We did a diagnostic to see which are the most vulnerable sectors on which we have to put more focus. And agriculture, water, and fisheries become the three first vulnerable sectors on which we put a lot of effort. And those sectors rely with people livelihoods and food systems. And when I say agriculture, you can also understand that livestock is inside. So in our first document, these sectors was very important. So food production system is among our key priorities. And food system now became very, very complex and long because in our sectors, when we are in the primary sector, we are dealing with the food production system. So the food processing, food transportation can be another part. So in this process, our NAPA has highlighted this importance, and we were looking for resources to implement. Unfortunately, we have just some with FAO, Farmers Field Schools project, which did a very important job. And in 2020, we have submitted our NDC. And in this NDC, agriculture, livestock, fisheries, water also has a very important role to play now with some ambitious targets in terms of mitigation, but also in terms of adaptation. So we have set it up our targets, but how to transform those targets in operational projects, it was an issue. And we have now the support of UNDP and FAO through the project we call the SCALA, that are supporting the country now to say, okay, yes, to say, okay, you have set it up some targets, but now you are targeting some value chains, like the peanuts, the millet, and the market gardening. You say we'll be using composting to enhance productivity in market gardening, in which sector also we have a lot of youth and a lot of women involved. And we have also another sector, which is the peanut is the main cash crop in Senegal, and the millet is the main staple crop. So how to advance on this one? In the project, we are now carrying a lot of studies to better understand the whole value chain of the peanut and the millet, to see who is involved in terms of the government, private sector, public sector, and civil society, farmers, to see how they are organized, what are the current challenges they are facing for them to move through transformation to agroecology, because we are seeking to implement agroecology approaches to see how we can work together, what is on the ground, what is lacking, and on what we have to build. And those studies are just launched. We have two studies that identified the actors on every level, and now we are other that are just trying to identify gaps and how we can build capacities, training materials, and for everyone. And that is important because we need to understand this value chain to see what kind of seeds they are using, what is lacking, and what we can improve. And also those studies will be looking on networking to see it is not only a matter of producing food, but those farmers will produce, they need a market. So to sell what they produce for their activities to be sustainable. So these studies also will be looking at this area to see how we can improve on connecting those farmers to the market, and then seeing also how we can strengthen their capacities. And from that one also, we have had the support of FAO through the SAGA project that helped the country building some, transforming our NDC, agriculture NDC options to bankable projects. That is very important now. If we have partnership, it is very easy through these projects now to mobilize funds. But these projects also has a very important role because climate change management, the governance is very important. And sometimes when we say climate change, people think that this matter is for the Ministry of Environment. And when we move to NDCs, NDCs are sectoral, so it became a sectoral policy. And the SAGA project made very important progress on building capacities of the Ministry of Agriculture, building some teams, special teams that were involved now on carrying everything related to climate change, how to mainstream climate change into their sectoral policies and project programs, and also the national dialogue on climate change. So the project supported to advance agriculture issue on the National Committee on Climate Change Activities, but also at the grassroots level. Farmers are saying, okay, we hear about green climate change, but we never see a project. And this project supported a lot of meetings at the grassroots level to train them what is climate change, how you can benefit from climate change, and also carrying a lot of multi-stakeholder meetings, dialogues at the regional level, because we have the National Committee on Climate Change. In every province, we have the Regional Committee on Climate Change. And that one has set it up, but we're not working. With this SAGA project, they was very dynamic, a lot of discussions, and they set it up some plan, action plan to be implemented for in their area.
Thanks so much for these insights. I think it's a case in point that not only the national action plans on adaptation, but also the NDCs are key in the process. You did highlight capacity, the need for capacity building. FAO support is there, but you need more for the field schools and others, and maybe we can get back to that eventually. But let me go to Scala, because we have an expert on Scala with us here today, and that's Samuel. And Samuel can probably tell us what are the levers and key considerations that countries should embrace when they implement their NDCs and their NAPs, contributing to the food system transformation from your vantage point, UNDP, FAO expert, please.
Yeah. Thanks so much for that. Once again, Samuel is my name. Yeah, indeed, as Lamine mentioned, the entry point, if we are transform our systems, we see as countries roll up to implement their national plans, NDCs, NAPs, ATS, gives an opportunity. But how does that opportunity come about to transform the food systems? Is looking at the priorities which are entailed there, specific priorities for the agriculture, water, and land use sectors. Then how can these priorities be packaged in a way that causes, once implemented, lead to transformation of the food systems? So that's where SCADA comes in. Now, SCADA comes in to support countries to make that translation. Translating the priorities in these and specifically in the agriculture, water, and land use sectors, and package them in climate solutions that once implemented can lead into transformation of the food systems. And one of the things we realized is that if you are going to do that, first of all, you have first understand the food system itself. And the entry point with the program is to do systems level assessments. Not look at the production and distribution of food, but also look at other domains such as governance, inclusiveness, whole of governance, environmental issues. So we support countries to conduct systems level assessment, understand let's say the farming systems or the agricultural landscape with these domains. And what we have done is to design, of course, if you have to do an assessment, you need tools and approaches that can guide. So under the program, say the program is implemented by FAO and UNDP, we have come up with a tool, we call it Climate Action Review tool. This tool gives a holistic approach on how to assess these priorities which are already entered in the national plans and assess or appraise their transformative potential. The tool calls for participatory, inclusive, and consultative approach, whereby it brings stakeholders in a participatory manner to appraise these priorities and then come up with specific activities which we are calling climate solutions. Identify specific climate solutions that can be implemented to advance these priorities. The importance of that tool is that, yes, it draws in stakeholders, it emphasizes on inclusiveness, and one of the key points is that the solutions which come up have got to be gender responsive, have got to be advancing inclusion, looking at even socially excluded groups like indigenous groups, has got to be advancing innovativeness, has got to be advancing whole of governance approach. All these are embedded in the tool in a manner that a package of climate solutions that come up are holistic. When that is done, then through consultative processes, even in bringing the private sector actors on board, it goes through a process of packaging these solutions into bankable proposals, project proposals, and concepts. And these project proposals and concepts are used as tools for looking for financing, not only for public financing of verticals for climate action, but also funding from the private sector. So if I'm to give 4 or 5 points on the levers, one is that you have got to build a knowledge base, an evidence base. 2 is that you have got to do that through participatory and consultative process, which involves all, but which also addresses issues of innovativeness, of governance, and 3 is that the solutions are co-designed. It's not one institution in the government that comes up with climate solutions, but it's co-designing of the solutions. And then 4 is that the target is to bring in the private sector financing. So I would identify those 4 as the key levers that countries need to focus on if they are going to translate their priorities in their NDCs and NAPs and other climate plans to enhance the transformation of food systems.
Thanks so much. You gave me actually the segue to ask the next speaker, and that's Esther, about the inclusiveness, the gender inclusiveness. She is a gender expert, as you know from my introduction, and particularly engaged in a youth platform of CGIAR, and I would like to know more about the impact of that platform, please.
All right. Thank you. And I agree, that's a very nice segue to what we do. So I work with the CGIAR gender platform, which is hosted by ILRI, where I worked also for around 10 years. So you want to, first of all, understand the significance of research, and one of it is provide evidence, as he has articulated very well. So what we do is provide a space for the invisible to be visible. That's the young women, so women in general and the youth. And really how we do this is by highlighting the gaps. And the gaps can be in access. For example, a recent research shows that only 15% of women have access to land, yet 43% of the labor force in the agriculture sector is from women. We also we also highlight the gaps in terms of decision making, in terms of existing social norms that hinder uptake of technologies or uptake of other development initiatives. Secondly, we also provide the space for evidence. For example, once you have the evidence, he articulated very well, once you're implementing, so really what works in space. So providing evidence of what works, what doesn't work, and then providing the space for people to think that. Finally, highlighting existing solutions that we have, because most of the time we forget that communities have existing solutions that work for them, highlighting those and seeing how we can scale that. So why is it important? Once you highlight the gaps and works and the evidence, then this can feed into policy. It also feeds into funding, but also for the women and the youth, then this, including them, also increases the potential of having other agri-food systems outcomes. As he says, looking at the agri-food system, outcomes in terms of nutrition, in terms of incomes, and alleviating poverty. However, also want to highlight the second point is how we frame research. So we don't only look at women as a whole, as uniform, but also looking at the intersectionality in terms of how different they are, or how youth are different in different areas in terms of education, the location, and tailoring specific solutions for this. Also the other issue is not only looking at the household level, but looking at women and youth from a systems perspective, and then it moves from only a woman or a youth problem to a systems issue. Then we have not only to fix the woman or the young person, but fix the system. And here then we bring it broad, we are able also to bring in partners. You had also how we work with other partners, yeah? So once you identify the gaps, they can work with partners to not only get the funding, but also to influence policy, but also we work with grassroots partners, for example, farmer-led organizations, for example, development partners, where we present evidence. And I like he highlights one is this evidence that then can be used, but also not only provide evidence, but also see how the intervention already being implemented are working. And it's a continuous cycle.
And Esther, can I ask a quick question? Pretend I'm a youth from one of the countries, and I do want to work with you. How do I go about that?
Oh, yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, so usually our work is in communities. So for example, I will highlight one of the work that's being implemented by ILRI. So this is farmer-led adaptation. So we are, for this project, it gives a real context in Nandi and Baumert counties in Kenya. And we go to the farms and identify champions who are already innovating in issues on adaptation and mitigation. And innovating, it could be they're feeding their cows differently, they're storing their manure differently. And we highlight these cases, and these cases can be used as stepping stones to help people in the community.
Wonderful. We have one of these cases, not yet working with CGIAR, but still being incredibly innovative with us, Eliud. I would love to pass over to you to ask you, what do you think is needed to include more youth in the processes of food system transformation? Over to you, and tell us more about your project.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Eliud Rugut, and I'm AgriChampion with the BKMC Foundation, and I'm also a farmer. So I'm here representing farmers in Kenya and also farmers in Africa. You might not like what I would say, but I'm here to give the news and the communication from them, the farmers on the ground. And I'm really pleased that I've been invited to being among the speakers here, and mostly because as farmers we are usually left when such discussions are happening. And the climate has come to Africa. The climate has come to Africa, and we have to discuss the issue of the farmer. And I'm glad that I'm here to represent the farmer voice. And thank you very much, the BKMC Foundation, the UNDP, and LSCA. And what we are experiencing as farmers, there's a huge disconnect between what you're gassing and what you're experiencing on the ground. There's much talk, and the talk is on adaptation. We have these big names: climate adaptation, farmer resilience, mitigation. How do we adapt? But on the ground, we are not feeling you guys. There's so much research being done. There's so much concept papers being done. And on the ground, we are not feeling it. Like in Kenya, you normally say that mambo kwa ground didn't. In English, I can interpret things on ground are different. The reality is different. So, Eliud, I'm a founder of Silo AFAT, where we provide post-harvest loss storage solution to farmers. And I, as a farmer, these are the things that we're experiencing. I started a project some years ago. It's called the 1 acre model, and we are basically what I'm basically trying to do is to deal with this, address this issue of land ownership and getting land resources available to the UN. We come from a patriarchal society. Africa is a patriarchal society, and these land resources, they are only available to the men. And the women are not having access to this land. Youth are not having access to this land. So what are we doing to address this issue, this problem? And I came up with a solution. It's called 1 acre model. What I'm trying to do is I'm setting up a demo farm, and we are trying to, what I'm trying to do is bring in all these climate smart technologies, drip irrigation system, trying to move away from monocropping to diversifying our crops, use of organic farming. And with that, I've been able to plant bananas. I'm intercropping with indigenous vegetables just to deal with nutrition. And I can say from what I've been doing, from my family, we've been able, my parents have been able to get access to these nutritious meals, nutritious food, nutritious, and also these fruits and vegetables. And they're getting it on the farm. So the question is, what we are doing here at this panel, at this level, how much impact, how are we impacting the people on the ground? How are we impacting them? Yes, as Ban Ki-moon Foundation, they're able to come bring farmers together, the youth farmers. We came up with a session of paper, and we were able to present it to COP28, COP27, and some of it will be able to present at COP28. And we are outlining the key things that needs to be done on the ground. Because every time we are wasting, talking about climate adaptation, climate mitigation, on the ground, we are losing livelihoods. As farmers, we are losing our brothers and sisters. On the farm, we are losing our animals, we are losing our livelihoods. Children are not going to school. Our children are experiencing malnutrition. Breastfeeding mothers are not getting access to food, good nutrition. Maize is the main staple crop in Kenya, but we find that every year we are losing 12 million bags. And 2-3 months down the line, what are we doing? We are fundraising. This year, we are trying to fundraise around to get 2 to 3 million bags that will be able to be distributed to the farmers in Kajiado, these drought-prone areas. But what are we doing in terms of harvest losses? And as farmers, we have good news, and we also have bad news. We are adapting, and solutions that we are taking is on bread solutions, and you guys need to catch up.
Thank you, Eliud. It is always have challenging voices in the room that yes, there is a lot of talk of policy and of high-level kind of considerations. It boils down to the smallholder farmer level. We're talking about 500 million people that are directly affected by the crisis that occurs in matters of climate. And Eliud, you and your family, one of them, thanks for being a spokesperson. You spoke about funding and that you are raising money, obviously, like many others, for your efforts. And I do want to bring Dr. Baumert, because funding mechanisms are of the essence, and you represent GIZ, and GIZ has examples of innovative funding mechanisms that help farms on the ground. And yet, probably explore to us about it, what they are, and I'm surely have follow-up questions.
Okay, thank you for having me, and thank you for reminding us that we bring our words really to location. I think that was really doing. So I'm Sophia Baumert. Good to see you all, that you come into this room. I'm from GIZ, the German Development Corporation, and we are a service provider for the entire German government, the Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development of one of our main clients. And over the last 7 years, on behalf of only BMZ, we have implemented over 300 or supported over 300 projects with a budget of more than 2 billion euros in the field of agri-food and climate, so at the nexus of climate and agri-food. And our focus has on adaptation measures in African agriculture. Said the portfolio is big, and there are many people out there working together, and I'm only one of those. So I tried to pick 3 examples of our portfolio where I think these are important fields of actions and that are really needed to drive adaptation further. So let me start with the first one. So it's really focusing on the lack of reliable information and data on the expected long-term impacts of climate change, and at the local, regional, and national levels. And this uncertainty really has also implication on decision-making, also in international development cooperation. So what adaptation measures do we need? So GIZ, in this regard, is partnering with the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, the PIC. It's one of the world's leading science centers, cost-effectiveness and suitability for local conditions. The results are publicly available, and they are informing adaptation planning and climate-proofed investment plans. And I think this is more a step before the finance comes in, but it's really important to have these, to have climate-proofed investment plans and to really know where to channel the finance to drive adaptation. And my second example is going more to the local level, to the farmer level. Also, smallholder farmers need climate risk information and form of weather forecasts or seasonal predictions. And this information needs to be easily understood and linked to concrete recommendations for action so that they know what to do. It's not only raining for the next 2 months, but what should we do? And this really enables farmers then to better manage climate risk in agriculture production and to eventually reduce crop losses in the case of extreme weather events. In Zambia and Madagascar, for example, GIZ is therefore cooperating with agrometeorological advisory services to modernize their service and the dissemination of climate information and recommendations for action. And in the second step, we are also cooperating with local insurance providers on product innovations to really cover also the residual risk with insurances. So even if you are doing precaution measures, and even if you have an adaptive farming system, so that you have an insurance in the case of an extreme weather event and loss and damage. My last example leads a little bit more into the direction of mitigation finance and how this can be leveraged for adaptation pathways. And this is also links to the Nairobi Declaration. I'm sure you all have read them. I read it yesterday. So one of the commitments that is formulated is namely that we need financing mechanisms to value and compensate for the protection of nature, biodiversity, and the provision of climate services. And this is also where we are, GIZ is supporting the ministry, our ministry, the BMZ, in the development of an initiative. It's called the Compensation Initiative. It has been launched under the German G7 presidency in 2022. And it aims at exactly this, what is written there in the Nairobi Declaration. The rationale is that we require a paradigm shift away from a food system that it's only thought in producing food and it's only valued for producing food, but to a system that provides multifunctional services and is also valued for this. And to do so, we need really to put a value on the provision of public services, all kinds of public services that the farmer provides, such as ecosystem services, and we need to reward smallholder farmers for their provision. And so the initiative seeks to contribute to the development of both market-based and public financing instruments that reward ecosystem services, and we are partnering with both the private sector and governments. And under the umbrella of this initiative, GIZ is also piloting a number of smallholder carbon projects and is also scoping other payment for ecosystem service models that really serve the smallholder farmer needs. I guess the carbon market is one of the most advanced mechanisms in this field, one of the market-based mechanisms, and we all know that it's not coming without risks. There have been a lot of discussions going on during this climate summit. However, to my opinion, as long as there are no adaptation claims on the market ready for being sold to the private sector that are interested, apart from carbon credits, also pay for adaptation claims or poverty reduction claims or other impact claims, I think it's really a good way to go and leverage private sector money and channel it to smallholder farmers. Important is that it's thought in a broader adaptation approach. So we are not doing carbon farming projects for the sake of carbon, but we are doing it in a broader adaptation approach, where the carbon credits are sort of co-benefits that are coming along. And I think then really it can contribute to the financing of the costly transition phase to climate adapted agriculture system, because if a farmer to decide that he's transitioning to a sustainable farming system that is adapted to climate change, this might come with higher costs and lower yields. So they need incentives to really take this way. So I stop here and hand back to you. Thank you.
Wonderful. We have now heard a couple of approaches for solutions, but also skeptical voices. And I would love, before I turn the floor to you, dear audience, to ask your questions, and we will collect them, and the panel will then stand ready to answer. But before I do that, I would like to hear very short interventions by each and every one of you, and I have one key question to all of you. If you had to identify one major challenge that you want to have solved within a year's time, what would it be? And why do you want that to be solved? But really a short answer, because we have the perspective, and maybe I can pass it back to you and to the experience of Senegal. Lamine, if you had to pick one challenge, what do you want to have solved in 1 year's time when it comes to the NDCs or the NAPs?
Yes, the most important challenge now is how to strengthen countries' capacities to be designing bankable projects. It's one.
Bankable projects.
Bankable projects.
Building for bankable projects.
Because as you know, climate finance is very diverse, and for every donor, every partner, the criteria are not same. For GIAR, for World Bank, for climate finance, sometimes it's difficult. And the most important part is the climate rationale. When you come to write this part, it's very, very difficult, and it's need very lot of data, socio-economic or carbon data, and research improvement on that area.
Thanks so much. I saw hefty nodding with you, Sophia.
Yeah,
Would you?
Thank you. I just would like to add to this regarding bankable projects. So I think what I would love to see is really, we know we need a restructure of the financial architecture. We need finance flows that go in a different direction to really support climate-adapted agriculture. And I would love to see a business case for nature-based solutions for adaptation. So really that the people, the private sector is ready to pay for adaptation and for kind of impact that we want to see.
Who wants to pick the next challenge? I see you smiling, Esther. Go.
Thank you for this opportunity. For me, I think the most immediate one is to close the gender gap and also the youth gap, and present this not only as problems but as solutions. Why? Already we have inequalities. Now imagine with more climate change hazards and risks, with the existing fuel prices, fertilizer issues. So then, if we don't close this and you bring in funding into this, then this risks exacerbating these gender gaps, and also not really leveraging on the needs and the opportunities that we have in women and in youth.
I smile because, Esther, this is so ambitious. I gave you a time frame of 1 year, solving it within 1 year. Good luck to all of us. Who wants to contribute? Eliud, are you feel ready? Or Samuel? Samuel.
Well, to me is, as Eliud said, is to package all this and see how does it work for the communities, how does it work for the people who implement. How can we scale up practices like Eliud, what he mentioned, like 1 acre approach, and how can we scale it up and it works for the communities, it works for people to adapt, build resilience, but also sustain the food system. It's not really focusing on the high-level priorities, but is really to think through all that and look at the entry points for action at the community level, for action for people who need to adapt, systems which need to adapt, and build resilience to climate change.
That leads us again to youth. Eliud, please.
Okay. The smallholder farmers, like I mentioned, we have adapted. And how we've adapted the new technologies. And what we are lacking is finance. We are lacking finance. The climate finance you guys are talking about is not reaching the grassroots. We want the finances. In terms of technology, we've collaborated as smallholder farmers. And right now, we have a team. It's called the Kenya Agtech Kenya Disruptive ag-tech startups, and we are looking for funding. And that funding will come directly to the grassroots. We are working with the 33 million smallholder farmers in Africa. And what we need for you is blended financing. You guys work together. We want the private sector and the public sector to work together. And we are ready to negotiate with you guys, whether it's debt financing, whether it's convertible notes, whether it's grant financing, we are ready to work with you. So we want the financing on the ground. Thank you.
Thanks, and also thanks for being so succinct, all of you. I do want to turn to the floor and really get your questions to engage with our amazing speakers. There is a roving microphone, so if you show me your hand, who is breaking? Yes, wonderful. We have two already over there. Would you hand the microphone first to the gentleman and then to the lady in the third row? Please introduce yourself briefly and then your question.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
My name is Mukhtar Mohammed. I'm from Somalia. I'm also a master's student here in Nairobi doing climate change adaptation. Apart from that, I'm really very wondered for my young pro. Is a big man really. I wonder and the activity and the work he has done. So I have one question to him directly. So we was talking about the helping small-scale farmers and also post-harvesting services. So just I want to ask the roots and if these projects are applicable to other places, other countries. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. We are collecting more. Please, over there in the third row, the lady.
So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mariam Sissé. I'm a PhD student in sustainable crop production. And I hear what you said about the lack of communication between policymakers and farmers. And I was wondering, do you feel like it's the same with scientists? Because most scientists are not farmers. So while I'm in my office trying to design management practice that can impact farmers, I'm wondering if my work will be heard and if it's needed and how I can implement what is happening on the field.
Thanks so much. I think this is an ideal question then for you, Esther. Who else? Any other hands up? Any other questions at this stage? Yes, I see one over here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the panelists for the very insightful discussion. And my question is to the colleague from GIZ. I really love the comment around showing that food systems are not just producing food, to show also for example, the adaptation and mitigation benefits we're getting from these interventions that we are promoting. And maybe I just wanted to get some insights around, now there has been a lot of discussion around monitoring and reporting on adaptation, especially at the global level. So what maybe do we need to do, especially the discussion around the global goal on adaptation, and to highlight the work around agriculture, and specifically for livestock, how are we promoting adaptation? What kind of benefits are we getting? And maybe how do we need to design that architecture around monitoring and reporting on adaptation? Thank you.
Anyone else who still wants to throw in the hat in the ring? Wonderful. Over there, the gentleman in the blue shirt. And then we're going to turn back to the panel to answer.
Thank you very much. I'm Getachew from ILRI. My question is, I think these actions should be multi-sectoral and multi-actor interventions in order to address all the complexities that are coming us because of the effects of climate on food systems. So if it is multi-sectoral and multi-actor, because I heard that there is a disconnect between the actors and so on, how should it be coordinated at national level, at regional level, and so on? Because this needs a very coordinated activity that is very much owned by the government, led by the government, in order to bring like what GIZ is working on, what other NGOs and bilateral organizations, the research, the government sector offices are working. It has to be really very much coordinated and led by a certain entity that can really be account others for the actions they are doing. Thank you.
That was more a comment, or do you have a question, a concrete question as well? It's a comment, okay.
It's a comment because this is, it has to be multi-sectoral, multi-actor, and it has to be well coordinated at national level.
Thank you. Okay, there is one young boy still that I want to take for a question, hopefully, or is it a comment? Question?
Question.
Super.
My name is Victor Ben Kwabe from Climate Lens News, and my question is about the youth's place in the agriculture, because it has been noted severally that youths are reluctant from getting into agriculture and doing the farming. So perhaps what can we do to motivate the youths to enter the space?
Thanks so much. So we have plenty of questions, and I would like to turn back to the floor. Who wants to start to answer any of it? I hope you jotted it down, but I can also reiterate. There was one question for GIZ. There was one question, I think, on the gender. Yeah, Esther, do you go first? No. Okay. Eliud, do you want to take it? Okay. Yes.
I'll start with my fellow youth. And like I said, you guys, you need to catch up. So youths we are actually at the forefront. We are providing solutions. And the biggest space that we are providing solutions is in the ag tech space. We're providing technology to these solutions. Like what you're doing at Silo Africa, we've taken what FAO had done on the metallic silos, and we embedded it with the post-harvest loss detection device so that in the event of any infestation, a farmer is able to be notified. So the ag tech space, it's around $1.7 trillion market. And in Africa, there's also, we've received funding around $2 billion, and that is something you can look at. And what are we doing as the youth? Like I said, we have a caucus, and we've collaborated together. Like, for example, from this, starting from the production space, we have like Sulma. Sulma is providing inputs to these farmers, and she's doing this using the credit scoring. He's scoring these farmers and providing the inputs on credit. After production, moving to the stages of the vegetative stage, production stage, we have Farmer Lifeline. Farmer Lifeline is having a pest detection device that is able to notify the farmer in the event of any infestation. Moving to agronomy, we have Agronomy Plus. Agronomy Plus, what they are doing, they're having Uber for agronomists. So that in the event of any infestation, the Farmer Lifeline, they're able to take that information to Agronomy Plus, and Agronomy Plus able to send the extension officers to the farmer in real time. After that, when it comes to post-harvest losses during harvesting, that's where we come in. And on top of that, after harvesting, we need to connect these farmers to the market. And after connecting the farmers to the market, we need instant payment. That is where VunaPay is coming. So you see the whole ecosystem. There are solutions. So what we need is funding so that we can be able to scale these solutions. Okay.
Yes, please, Samuel.
Yes, I would like to add on that. How can we get the youth involved, and how can we tap their contribution? One direct approach is to first reflect on their strength. What can they bring on board? What can the youth bring on board? To us, what me and the institution I work with, is the level of innovativeness that the youth have. What we have done is set up innovation hubs, accelerator hubs, to draw in the youth, to come up with solutions that can enhance adaptation. Develop applications, leverage the technology around, and come up with solutions that contribute to sector communities, or contribute to the implementation of like the plans that we talked about, but also enhance practices on the ground, especially in the agriculture sector, how farmers can access information related with weather, how farmers can access information of marketing, how farmers can access information on the inputs. We have given space to the youth to come up with innovative solutions, build applications, and contribute into how we are responding and building resilience and adaptive capacity in each sector. Beyond that, I wanted to respond, since I have the microphone, to one other question that was talking about how do we link science to practice, especially research that is going on. Indeed, there is a great disconnect. I participate a lot in formulating adaptation plans, sector adaptation plans for the agriculture sector. But gathering evidence that you can build on to come up with appropriate options becomes a challenge. And when you ask individually, you find different research institutions, universities have been doing research, but that research is still packaged in the scientific papers, publications, and thesis books. One of the ways is to create platforms that really can bring researchers together with practitioners and implementing communities. But not only bring all these stakeholders once research is being done, is to make sure, let's say, farming communities participate in designing of research programs, such that researchers know what are the needs of the farmers. If I'm going out to conduct my PhD thesis lesson on adapting varieties in a given area, I know specifically what farmers are asking for, such that the needs of end users of your research output is already catered in the research program. So we need to co-create the research programs, but also we need to create platforms where researchers can disseminate or package the output for policy, but for also practice, and it reaches people who use it. I was happy for some time. I was taken up by DAAD, a German institution, to teach, not to teach, but to work with researchers on how to package their research output for policy and practice. And simple things like policy briefs, simple things like communication notes, abridged version of their thesis can be packaged and also integrated into systems which are there. For example, like extension information systems at the government level. So those are the kind of structures and connections that need to be created. Thanks.
Thanks. And I have to drop in that the Ban Ki-moon Center is doing exactly that, trying to bridge smallholders, scientists, but also policymakers. Eliud was mentioning it. We craft demand papers that literally our smallholder farmers are handing over to the ministers to give their priorities of what needs to happen in the agricultural space in elevating adaptation. But I saw Lamine wanting to react, and I hope to still get Esther and also Sophia to give us their final remarks.
Okay, thank you. I think it is important to think how to involve these multi-stakeholders in terms of research. I'm just remembering in Senegal when we start our NAP process and we say, okay, we are just gathering data from research. We are decision-making side, and they sent a lot of articles. When you see some curves, the difference is significant, not significant. This language cannot work for decision makers. So one thing is to see how we can sit together to make the decision, yes, to make the language understandable by decision makers. And we went through what we call some consortia of research on water, on agriculture, on soils. And there we can meet with researchers to discuss something, and they provide the information. We transform it in a very legible way, and we can now bring them at the decision-making process. So it is important. And we are also talking about multi-stakeholders. Sometimes we say, okay, we will be mainstreaming civil society. But when you see civil society is very diverse, who is civil society, who not. Sometimes you see civil society say, no, it's a private sector. So it's important to be mapping, to know who is and who is not. And the Scala project in Senegal is doing that. They are mapping actors to see who we can put in civil society, who we can put in private sector, so that when we convene a meeting for them, we will be sure that we involve the real persons. So it is important, not just saying multi-stakeholder, multi-scientific. We need to map to see who is doing what and who is relevant for what kind of work. Thanks.
Thanks for that reaction to the multi-stakeholder, multi-actors comment that came from the floor. Very important. Esther?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for this opportunity. Yeah, I would like to say, yes, there's a very big disconnect, not only between research and farmers, but the disconnect also comes from between research and policymakers. Also sometimes disconnect between research and funders. So, and sometimes also between research and research, because we have to bring in multiple streams of research. For example, you'll have the social issues, for example, the biophysical issues, someone is working on plants. How do we bring this together? Noting that there is a big disconnect, but there is also fragmentation of information. So I echo what the other speakers have said. There is need to bring in these multi-stakeholders together, but usually the issue is who convenes this and how long. You see, for example, if I talk from the standpoint of people who are working in projects, it's limited in terms of time, 3 years, 4 years. So then after the project ends, who carries this? And for me, I think it's the people who are in that system who should be able to eventually be capacity builder to the point of being able to hold this together, because then you not only create sustainability from the beginning of those discussions, unlike how people usually work, where you bring in the issues of sustainability when the project is closing. So have those conversations early on. And as I had highlighted earlier, an example of the work that ILRI is doing, where you not only start from the farm, but understand the local issues. So what is the existing solutions that is working for those contexts? Use the people who are already champions to help others become champions. And that is a system that's already embedded within the communities, and it has a life even beyond the project timeline. As I close, I would also want to say there is an initiative by the CGIAR called Aim for C Sprints. And here we are inviting various stakeholders to come and co-create. We say co-creation is important. And also to bring in the solutions that they have together, that not only for climate change, but also for women and youth. So then bringing these people together, because everyone has a different strength, and leveraging on all these strengths and experiences then makes it easier to bring in holistic system-wide solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. And the last words for today go to Sophia for hopefully answering the one question that's still.
Yeah, thank you. I think this was the question on the MRV, the monitoring, reporting, and verification system, and how to track adaptation and mitigation impacts in our projects. So good that you asked that. I think we are not yet there. So GIZ is not yet there. So I cited the portfolio in the beginning, saying where we are working on the Agrifood climate nexus. And I think there's much more that we do, but it is not tracked because we do not have the indicators in place. So many projects that GIZ is implementing has an adaptation or mitigation impact, but it's not tracked. So I think there's lots to do, and we are working on it. I'm happy to link you to also colleagues that are working on the global goal on adaptation, so that we can follow up on this. Thanks.
Thanks so much to all of you, particularly to the speakers. Please give them a round of applause for their contributions. Do take the time to meet them now after the panel, and I hope you have a successful remaining time at the Africa Climate Summit. Thanks for being here.